The history you know is a narrative of progress, but beneath the surface lies a darker truth, hidden for decades. In 1920, Prohibition began. Alcohol was banned, but the demand never truly disappeared. Bootleggers repurposed industrial alcohol, intended for paint and fuel, into drinking liquor. To stop this, the federal government ordered industrial alcohol to be intentionally poisoned. Lethal chemicals like methanol and formaldehyde were added, turning supplies into deadly toxins. On Christmas Eve 1926, the first victims hit hospitals. Within days, dozens were dead. Medical examiners called it legalized murder, horrified by the government's use of poison. The government stood firm, arguing that those who broke the law took their own lives in their hands. By 1933, an estimated 10,000 Americans had died from government-mandated additives. This was only the beginning. The shadows of American history run deeper than we were ever taught. While Prohibition poisonings were taking place, another shadow was growing within the halls of American medicine. In 1932, the Public Health Service began the Tuskegee study, monitoring 399 black men with syphilis without ever treating them. Even after penicillin became the standard cure in the 1940s, it was withheld to observe the disease's natural progression. The truth didn't emerge until 1972, revealing 4 decades of calculated medical neglect. In Guatemala, US researchers went further, intentionally infecting 1,500 prisoners and patients with STDs to test antibiotics. At Vanderbilt, over 800 pregnant women were fed radioactive iron under the guise of vitamin drinks to study fetal development. These citizens were treated as data points, their health sacrificed for the pursuit of atomic-age secrets. Formal apologies came decades too late for the thousands whose lives were irrevocably broken. But the exploitation of the vulnerable was only one facet of a much larger machine of secrecy. As the Cold War intensified, the pursuit of control reached the very depths of the human mind. In 1953, the CIA launched Project MK-Ultra, aimed at developing mind control techniques. Led by Sidney Gottlieb, the agency conducted illegal experiments, often using LSD on unsuspecting subjects. Sensory deprivation and hypnosis were used to break down the psyche of prisoners and patients. Under Operation Midnight Climax, the CIA used safe houses to lure men who were secretly drugged and monitored. Agents watched behind mirrors as subjects experienced drug-induced terrors, all in the name of security. In 1973, most records were ordered destroyed, leaving the true scale of the experiments a mystery. The scars of MK-Ultra remain a haunting testament to how far the government would go to control the mind. But while the mind was being explored, other plots were hatched to reshape the world through deception. In the early 1960s, the Cold War was at a boiling point, and Cuba was at the center of the storm. In 1962, the Joint Chiefs presented a proposal that would remain secret for decades: Operation Northwoods. The plan was a series of false flag operations, staged attacks designed to blame a foreign enemy. The documents proposed staging terrorist attacks in American cities to create a pretext for war. They even considered blowing up a US ship, sacrificing American lives to manipulate public opinion. Every act was to be blamed on Castro, providing the justification needed for a full-scale invasion. President Kennedy ultimately rejected the proposal, but its existence remains a chilling revelation. The documents remained classified for 35 years, hidden until their declassification in the 90s. But while wars were being planned, a silent war was being waged against the public at home. As the world watched the conflict in Vietnam, a silent, more devastating operation was underway in the neighboring country of Laos. Between 1964 and 1973, the United States conducted the most intense bombing campaign in human history. Over 2 million tons of ordnance were dropped on this neutral nation, more than all the bombs dropped during World War II. For 9 years, a plane load of bombs was released every 8 minutes, 24 hours a day. This secret war was concealed from the American public and even Congress, carried out in total shadow. The goal was to sever supply lines, but the cost was paid by the rural civilian population. Today, 80 million unexploded cluster bommies remain buried in the Laotian soil. Decades after the last plane left, these hidden killers continue to claim lives, turning farmland into minefields. The echoes of these explosions still resonate, a legacy of a war that officially never happened. While secrets were buried in foreign soils, a different shadow was stretching across the American landscape. In 1956, the FBI launched COINTELPRO, a program designed to surveil, infiltrate, and disrupt political groups. It targeted domestic groups deemed subversive, from civil rights leaders to anti-war activists. Methods included illegal wiretapping and psychological warfare meant to sow internal discord. In a chilling act, the FBI sent an anonymous letter to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., encouraging him to take his own life. The program remained secret until 1971, when activists broke into an FBI office and stole classified files. The leaked documents revealed the agency's staggering war against its own citizens' right to dissent. COINTELPRO's exposure forced a reckoning, but the infrastructure of domestic surveillance remained. But the fight for rights has often been met with a level of force that history books rarely mention. In the summer of 1921, the hills of West Virginia saw the largest armed insurrection since the Civil War. 10,000 miners rose up against the brutal feudal control of the coal companies. Wearing red bandanas for identity, they marched for the right to unionize and for basic dignity. Private planes dropped homemade bombs and chemical gas on the workers, the first aerial bombing on US soil. President Warren G. Harding responded by sending in thousands of federal troops to crush the uprising. The conflict lasted for days, a desperate struggle between the labor force and the full might of the state. Faced with the US Army, the miners surrendered, unwilling to fire upon their nation's own soldiers. Nearly 1,000 miners were indicted for murder and treason, their struggle largely erased from national textbooks. But the dangers hidden within the landscape were not limited to the hills of West Virginia. In the US military, a broken arrow is a code name for a terrifying reality: a nuclear accident. In 1958, a 7,000-pound hydrogen bomb was dropped off the coast of Georgia. In 1965, another weapon was lost in the Philippine Sea when a jet rolled off a carrier. The military admitted to 32 such incidents, but 6 nuclear weapons were never found. These weapons remain on the ocean floor, their locations unknown, silent relics of hidden dangers. For decades, the public was kept in the dark about how close we came to a nuclear catastrophe. Search efforts were abandoned, leaving the sea to guard some of the nation's most dangerous secrets. The missing broken arrows are a haunting reminder that advanced systems are subject to human error. But while weapons were being lost at sea, the health of leaders was being guarded with equal secrecy. Behind the public image of the presidency, the health of leaders has often been a closely guarded secret. In 1893, President Grover Cleveland underwent a secret surgery to remove a cancerous tumor. The procedure took place on a private yacht, hidden from the eyes of the press and the public. To explain his absence, the public was told the president simply had 2 teeth pulled. Decades later, Woodrow Wilson suffered a stroke that left him incapacitated for 18 months. His wife, Edith Wilson, managed the executive branch, deciding which papers reached the president. She issued orders in his name, acting as the first female president in all but name. These crises were managed in the shadows, highlighting the tension between national stability and public truth. But as the century progressed, the state's reach would extend into the lives of the most vulnerable. In the early 20th century, a movement took hold in America that sought to perfect the race through exclusion. It was the eugenics movement, a philosophy that labeled thousands of citizens as unfit or feeble-minded. Over 30 states passed laws allowing for the forced sterilization of those deemed a burden on society. By the 1960s, more than 60,000 Americans had been sterilized, their futures stolen in the name of progress. Children were warehoused in institutions in unspeakable conditions, hidden from a public that preferred not to look. It took decades for journalists to expose the systemic abuse, finally bringing the practice to an end. The scars of the eugenics era remain a permanent mark on history, defined by its shadows as much as its light. From the poisonings of Prohibition to the human mind, the dark side of America is a truth that demands to be heard. The history you were never taught is the one that most defines the nation today. We have journeyed through a century of shadows, uncovering truths never meant to be heard. From the intentional poisoning of its own citizens to the clandestine plans for false flag operations. We saw the devastating cost of human experimentation and the systemic exploitation of the most vulnerable. Wars were waged in total shadow abroad, while at home, dissent was met with illegal surveillance. Forgotten workers and the lost relics of the atomic age remind us of the fragility of national narratives. But the power of these stories lies in their exposure. History is what we choose to remember. These shadows define the American landscape, a permanent legacy of secrecy and resilience. The truth demands to be heard even when buried deep within the archives of the past. The history you know is only half the story. The rest lies in the shadows.